Jimmy Buckingham. Shalom from Israel. The summer I faced death from cancer before the Lord miraculously healed me. My 9-year-old granddaughter, who lives next door, came to see me. "Papa, are you afraid to die?" "No, Kristen, I'm not afraid to die, although this time I believe God wants to heal me." "What's it like to die?" Then I said, "Do you remember last year when you stayed with us while your mom and dad went out at night? You went to sleep on the sofa in our house. But during the night, your daddy came by and picked you up and carried you next door to your house. And when you awoke the next morning, the sun was streaming through your window and you were in your own bed. That's what death is like if you believe in Jesus. You go to sleep, Jesus comes to get you, and when you wake up, you're in heaven." She smiled quietly and said, "Thanks, Papa." That's what Jesus has done for us. He rose from the grave and has opened the door for all the rest of us, if we believe in him, to have life after death. Come with me in this final session of this video to the most beautiful spot on earth, a little garden in Jerusalem, next to an open tomb where the Son of God overcame the last enemy, death.
Israel is a land of graves. Tombstones dot every hillside. Jerusalem is one great cemetery, filled with the graves of ancients and moderns. But only one grave is empty. All the others are filled with dead men's bones. Only here, at the grave of Jesus, do we find an empty tomb, the symbol of his greatest conquest, victory over death. It's been more than a dozen years since my daddy died. It was Sunday noon. We'd just come in from church and the phone was ringing. It was my mother. "Daddy has just gone to be with the Lord." Jackie and I went back out the door, leaving our Sunday dinner on the table. It was a 30-mile drive. At least I wanted to. But as I drove in silence, Job's question kept swirling through my mind. If a man dies, will he live again? It's a question we all ask when death strikes. My mother had said, "Daddy has gone to be with the Lord." But how did she know? How does anyone know where you go when you die? What's to prove you're not like ants stepped on by kids, or like leaves burned in the fireplace? We pulled up in the carport, and I went back into his room. His body was on the bed, a thin tan blanket pulled up over his chest. His mouth was partially open, and his arm was hanging at an awkward angle off the bed. I knelt beside him and could almost hear Longfellow again, echoing in that empty room. Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul. I caressed his hand, and I remembered him telling me how he had caught me with his hands when I had been born. "For the first time," I cried. I stood looking out the window at the Florida he loved so well. He used to call it eternal springtime, reminding us of the harsh winters back in Indiana. Then, in silent words, he spoke to me. I've re-examined that sacred moment many times since then. Was I imagining things? Was I wanting to believe so desperately I just made it up? No. For when I talked to my wife later, she had sensed virtually the same thing. "You think Florida is beautiful," he said. "What you see out the window, son, is nothing compared to what I see." There was more, but it's too personal to relate here. The important thing was this. My doubt was gone. In its place was hope. Not the kind of hope that says, "I hope he's still alive." Rather, it was the biblical kind, the kind that Paul talked about in the book of Hebrews. We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm, secure. Easter is God's beautiful picture of hope to each of us. If a man dies, will he live again? That was the question of that first Jew. Another Jew answered with more than words. In this place, at this garden tomb, before the open grave, he answered with his life. That early morning, so many years ago, some of his friends, the grieving women who loved him so much, came to anoint his body with spices. It was 3 days since he had been crucified. Huge stone that was in front of the grave had been removed. The tomb was empty. Peering inside, they were startled by the bright, shining angel who sat on the ledge. "Why do you look for the living among the dead?" the angel asked so gently. "He is not here. He is risen. Because he lives, we shall live also. He is risen. He is risen indeed."